What's going on, everybody? Thank you for coming back to the channel. Today's going to be a little bit different. I'm making a video on how I edit my portraits today. For those that are new to the channel, welcome. First off, my name is Ben. I'm 21 years old. I'm a student at San Jose State. I'm currently a wedding and portrait photographer and an aspiring filmmaker. A lot of people ask me, what do I edit my photos and videos on? So my videos, like this one you're watching or all the other ones in the past, I edit all my videos in Apple's Final Cut Pro, all of my photos in Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop CC. They are both now part of the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite, which kind of packages all of Adobe software into one monthly or annual subscription. For today's lesson, it's fairly simple and basic. This tutorial or this how-to video is aimed at beginners and people who are just starting out. So I'm gonna be linking the portrait files below, straight out of the camera files. Instead of just showing you how I edit my photos and letting you kind of just figure it out for yourself, I'm including the files so that you can download them and edit along with me. That way you'll learn a lot faster. You can also follow along on your phone. There is an Android and an iPhone app, which is completely free. I'm gonna go ahead and move over to my computer now. I'll be recording my screen and showing you how I go about it step by step. So the first thing you want to do is put the photos onto your laptop or your computer, importing it onto your desktop. I would put everything on the desktop just to simplify and make things a little bit easier for you. So if you download my photos from the link below, you will actually have 4 photos. 2 of them will be RAW files and the other 2 will be JPEGs. Because on the phone version, if you don't pay the $5 a month fee, you only could edit JPEG photos. So once you are in Lightroom, the first thing you should know is don't be afraid. If this is your first time around, it is a little bit complicated looking, but you'll get used to it faster than you think. At the top here, we have a few modules. We have the library module, the develop, map, book, slideshow, print, and web. We are going to mainly worry about the library module and the develop module. First thing you're going to do is head into your library module. And on the left-hand side, we're gonna see this panel here. If you don't see it, it's gonna be a little arrow. You can hover to reveal it, or you can click to expand it. First thing you'll open is the folders. And within the folders, what you're going to do is go down to import. Right here at the bottom, you're gonna select import. This is where you will be bringing your photos into Lightroom. Head up here to select source, select desktop. Once you select desktop, you'll see every folder that is on your desktop. You are going to head into the folder that you downloaded. So in how to edit portraits, there are 2 files, the grad portrait I was talking about and the wedding night scene. So we're gonna go ahead and select import. It's gonna take about 10-15 seconds or so, depending on your laptop or computer. Now that we have our photos in our library, where do we go from there? Go ahead and collapse this. Next thing you want to do is head into your develop function. Click on develop. Head down to the bottom of the screen and you're going to see all your photos imported right below here. Select the first photo and we'll begin from there. Feel free to collapse the bottom portion so that you get a larger view of the photo itself, which will ultimately help you see all the finer details. Now that I have the photo in front of me, I'm gonna begin to play around with it and walk you through what I would do in this scenario and how I would edit this photo. I shot this portrait with a Canon 35mm f1.4. I shot it at f2 to reserve some sharpness, ISO 100, which is the lowest base ISO my Canon camera has, and also at 1/800th of a second. That might not mean anything to you, and that is totally okay. We'll learn that as we go along. But for now, let me explain my thought process when I look at this photo. The first thing that I realize, I wouldn't say is wrong, but I would say is a minor annoyance, is this white little circle right here. So out of all the greenery and all the bushes and trees, there's just this little white thing. This is actually a plastic bag. I'm gonna show you how to remove it. So in order to remove the bag, we need to use a tool that is going to be right here under the first panel. It will be the second tool on the right hand side. It is called the spot removal tool. You can click Q to access it quickly, or you can just click right here. So you can adjust the size on this by clicking size and dragging the slider, or you can just go ahead and tap the bracket keys. The left bracket key will make it smaller and the right bracket key will make it larger. So we want to make this just about the size of the bag that we're trying to cover. We're going to select heel, opacity at 100%, feather I'd like it to be around 20. Let's zoom in to get a better look at the object we're trying to remove. So while you're zoomed in, you can hold down the spacebar key and grab your screen to move the image around. Alright, so we're gonna hover over where the plastic bag is and we're just gonna click on it. The computer will do its best to kind of match it with whatever's nearby. It's not always completely perfect, but it works. Now that I have patched that up, however, I've accidentally interfered with the bush. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and paint back part of the bush. It has moved it over to her face. I'm gonna drag it down back towards the bush. So what this is doing is overlap the previous circle with the new circle. So when we're done, we're gonna go ahead and hit done. It's not perfect, but it looks good enough. And if you zoom out, you can't really see that that bag was there anymore. By hitting the backslash key, we can see the before and the after results on that plastic bag. I think that's a solid enough starting base before we move on with our photo. There's a couple more little things that I'd like to get rid of just because I'm detail oriented and I don't like little distractions in my photos. Remember you guys, these are just frivolous details that you don't have to take care of when you're editing photos, just something I like to do for myself. And it looks good. I like that we've covered up most of the things I wanted to cover up. To follow that, we are going to head into the basic panel. There is all kinds of options. I would say this is where most of your editing occurs. Right here you have temperature and tint. Basically, this decides how warm or how cold your photo is. First, I just want to show you what I mean by cool and warm. So I'm going to pull these sliders to the extreme to show you that. So if I go all the way to the left, as you can see, the image becomes very blue, or what we call cool. If I pull it to the right, you'll immediately see that the photo becomes very yellow and orange, what we call warm. In order to get back to our starting point, just go ahead and double click on the slider and it'll bring you back to the original look. The tint slider shows you how green or how magenta the photo is. The temperature looks really good. This is exactly how I remembered the day to look when I was shooting this photo, so I'm not going to play with these two, but you are more than welcome to do so. I'm going to move down to the next options. Exposure just means brightness of the image. This is going to the left, making it darker. Going to the right makes it brighter. I find that this picture to be a little dark. How do I know that? You can't really see the details within her cap, and her hair is kind of losing a little bit of shadow detail as well. So what I'll do first is move my exposure slider to maybe plus 0.04. I like that right there, so I'm going to move forward. I already like the contrast, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. But what contrast is the difference between the lights and the dark parts of your images. If I pull it to the right, it's very contrasty and very edgy. Move it to the left, you'll see it's very flat, giving you a more faded look. Double click to return it to 0. So the highlights are the brightest parts of your images. When I pull on this slider, you will see how it affects the image. If you notice, it only affects the brightest parts of the image. I'm going to bring it down to -10 or 15 to kind of bring back the whites in her dress. The shadows are the darkest parts of the image. If I pull it all the way to the left, you'll see that only the dark parts of the image are affected. This being her grad cap, a bit of the background, her hair, her eyes, etc. Pull it to the right, you'll see that all the detail comes back out. So I believe the shadows are just a little underexposed. I'm gonna bring it up to maybe plus 20 and move on. The next two sliders are pretty self-explanatory. Whites control how white are the whites. Blacks control how black are the blacks. Usually I like to bump up the blacks just a little bit, bring up a little more detail, but without giving it that high dynamic range or HDR look. Then I'm gonna bring down the whites just to balance out her skin tones. So already you've seen me play with just a few sliders. I'm gonna go ahead and click the button to show you. As you can see, the photo has already seen major improvements. Feel free to go ahead and pull it all the way to the left, all the way to the right, and see how vastly it affects your image. Remember, we wanna edit with moderation. Less is actually more. With the clarity slider, a lot of photography beginners usually love to crank it up really high and get this very edgy look. For her, I know I want to move a little bit towards the left. And as you can see, the left produces a softer look. Maybe -10 when you take a photo and it might be foggy. The dehaze feature can bring back the contrast details. I don't usually like to mess with the dehaze function too much, so I'm just gonna leave it as is. I'm not gonna mess too much with vibrance and saturation just because I love the way the colors already look. As I mentioned before, I shoot on a Canon, and Canon colors to me already look great straight out of the camera, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave it alone. Go ahead and close up the basic function, and I'm gonna open up the tone curves. So what are tone curves? I would say the tone curves is the most powerful option that Lightroom has. It allows you to edit the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights of the photos, all on one curve. Remember, whatever you do to one part of the image also affects the resting parts. What I like to do as a standard when I start editing on the tone curve is make a 3-point curve. All right. So what the 3-point allows me to do is section off what parts I want to edit at a time. So first thing I want to do is lift up the midtones just a little bit. You see how the colors in her face, her skin tone just pops, gives it a more 3D look. And lift up the highlights, which will brighten the brightest parts of the image. I'm going to bring down the shadows to get that contrast back. And with this tone curve, it's very simple and straight to the point, but it really works. I'm gonna go ahead and move this down just a little bit. Go ahead and do the same thing for the whites, bring down that side. That'll actually take my true whites to being less white and more of a grayish look. This photo, I intend to put it on a white background, so that will help separate it. Go ahead and collapse that. Already you see a dramatic difference. So next is the color panel. In the color panel, or known as the HSL sliders, which stands for hue, saturation, and luminance, you can control the colors individually, which is a really cool function. I've been messing with this quite a bit more in my recent work. While we were playing with this and controlling the exposure and the contrast, we also manipulated the color. I want to bring the color back to what it used to look like. The first color that I noticed made the change was the greens. The greens are just a whole lot more vibrant now, which is a pretty look, but I do not like how saturated they are. Head over to green, go to saturation, and I want to bring that saturation down quite a bit. It helps you focus the attention more on her and not the background. I'm also going to bring the green hue to the left, which will give it a little bit more of a fall look. I'm going to go up here to the yellows and do the same thing. Bring it down just a little bit. As you notice, the yellows kind of cleared up, and there you go. I love the greens the way it looks right now, so I'm going to move on with the image. Now that I'm done with color, take a little bit of a break, check the before and the after from time to time, because a lot of times when editors edit for a long period of time, they become so fixated on the new image that they forget what the old one looks like. It could lead to over editing, which will make your photo look a lot less natural. Split toning is where you can make the image very unique to your taste. This is how you add in artificial color to give it a certain vibe or a certain mood. Now that I have the photo color corrected, I want to grade it a little bit by giving it its unique look. I wanted to go for a more warm tone. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe click 5, and I'm going to bring up the hue to about 35 or 40. I would say around 35. I want to balance it out with a little bit of a cooler skin tone. So I'm going to go ahead and add 5 again, but this time, instead of staying on the left-hand side, I'm going to bring it over to the cooler tones. And I'm going to bring this back to 0 and pump in maybe 7. Alright, and if you want to see the before and the after on any certain parts of the modules here, all you have to do is click this little slider. Split toning is where you want to spend a little bit of time to develop your own style, your own taste. The only way you can achieve that is by practicing over and over again, trying different colors to get a unique color combination that you might like. Next is detail. Within the detail function, you will see sharpening and noise reduction. This is where you can sharpen your image and make your subject really stand out from the background. For sharpening, I don't want to add too much because the photo is already very sharp. I'm going to add about maybe 20. For radius, I usually like 1.5. So what you did here in the amount and the radius and the detail, it affects your entire image. Meaning when you sharpened her face, you also sharpened the background. In this case, we want the background to be softer than how she looks. So I'm going to hover over the masking feature. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option on my keyboard. I'm going to press and click on masking, and I'm going to drag it to the right. So the white lines is where it is going to be sharpened, and the blacks are where things aren't going to be sharpened. I'm going to go ahead and let go of everything. I'm going to just leave noise reduction alone. So lens corrections will correct the imperfections of your lenses. Go ahead and click remove chromatic aberrations, and I'm going to click enable profile corrections. When I click this option, the image changed a little bit on the outside. So with this lens, there is a little bit of a distortion and vignetting problem, which this function here fixes. And in Transform, this gives you the option to straighten your image. I'm going to click on Level. When I hit the Level function, the software will automatically read the image and straighten out the image for me. It doesn't always do a perfect job, and you can always adjust it, but in this case, it did a great job, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. Oh man, I'm really starting to feel the coffee. Feeling a little jittery here. Under Effects, we can go ahead and add vignetting, or those dark circles on the outside that will help you focus more of the attention to the center. So the grain option will add a little bit of roughness into your image, which will make it look a little less digital or electronic. People who love the old-fashioned or vintage and faded look really love this option. Calibration is basically another way of playing with those exact colors we've already messed with before, except it targets certain colors. One thing that I really like is messing with the hue slider on the blue primary. I typically move it to the left, maybe -10 or 15. It'll give the photo a little bit more of a orange and teal look, which is a very pleasant color combination. I'm gonna go ahead and hit close on the calibration, and there you go. So you've imported and edited and retouched the entire image, going through every slider. The last thing you need to do is export the image so you can keep it. I don't expect that you're gonna export this image and have it for yourself on your phone. Just to get you used to the process, I'm gonna show you anyways. Lift up this bottom slide again, highlight the image that we just edited, right click on it, go over to export. Go head up here to export ... click on it, go ahead to export to, and click on this drop down menu, select desktop. And we're gonna hit file renaming, go to custom name, type in a custom name. This can be anything you want. I'm just gonna name it grad photo complete. So after you've renamed your image, make sure your file format is JPEG, your color space is sRGB. After that, everything is pretty much the same. I would leave everything at default. When you're done with all that, go ahead and hit export. On the top left-hand corner, it will show the process running. And once that is gone, we know that it is complete. So if you head over to your desktop, you will see that the image is completed and exported. We can go ahead and open it right here and take a look at it. And there you go, that's really much it to photo editing. If you notice in the folder I gave you 2 files, I'm not gonna edit the second file. I wanna take this time to challenge you to edit that file on your own, and I wanna see what you can come up with. Feel free to export it and email it to me so I can take a look at it as well. I'm gonna go ahead and flash my email here on screen so you can do so. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you really enjoyed this one. This is my first time making something like this. Let me know what you wanna see next and what you wanna learn next. I just finished finals and I'm excited to make more of these kind of videos for y'all. See you guys in the next one.